Welcome to the Fallen Frequency Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Fallon, your guide through the world of music, art, and living life with a vibrational twist. Welcome back to another episode of the Fallen Frequency Podcast. I am your host, Adam Fallon, and today I have a very special guest. It's a very full circle moment, Dr. Bruce H. Gwinnup, who is a doctor of chiropractic. He is a certified board internist as well as an N.A.E.T allergy specialist, and he really is a living, walking example of health and longevity. He has been in this industry for upwards of 30 to 40 years. He, I believe, was certified in 1997 and continues to have a booming practice in Charleston, South Carolina, where I grew up, as he was also my doctor and chiropractor growing up throughout my entire childhood and adulthood. And he really planted the seeds for where I'm at this current moment. He was one of the first people that told me about the pharmaceutical industry and the allopathic model and how it was actually harming our human health to the greatest extent, and really helped me understand the bigger picture. Of course, when I was younger, I had no clue really what that meant in the bigger context, but as I've grown into an adult and as a holistic health practitioner and going to the Czech Institute, it is incredible to realize what he was telling me when I was 13, 14, 15 about, the certain pharmaceutical interventions that are given to most kids growing up to, the common allergies and all of the different problems with our food supply and why it's important to eat organic food, and really listening to our body and understanding natural health and healing on a greater context. And I love talking to him. We go in great depth about, his journey into becoming a doctor of chiropractic, and a little bit about how allergies are something that we can actually heal. And we are not a victim of circumstance, actually, when it comes to what happens to our body, when it comes to disease and ailments and things that hold us back from living our dream. So please enjoy this episode, and it would be a great honor if you enjoy this episode to share it with someone that you love, someone that you think will enjoy this episode, and I look forward to hearing your feedback. Thank you. Welcome to the Fallen Frequency Podcast. I am very excited to introduce our guest today, Dr. Bruce Gwinnup. He has been a major influence and planted the original seeds for anything about natural health and healing and holistic health. So it's a pleasure to have a full circle moment here. He is a chiropractic internist. And just getting right into it, what got you started in this whole journey?
Well, thank you, Adam, for allowing me to be part of your show. This is my world, and it is such a pleasure to be able to share what I have seen happen over the past 25 years of my life and how to help other people use it for their own health. How I got started in the chiropractic is I'm a little bit of a late in life student, if you will. I went through civil engineering and landscape architecture after leaving the Army, and I went through the master's program, only to find out that there was something more I wanted to do aside from just doing straight engineering with plants and site design for construction purposes. And I found that the human environment was just as exciting, if not more, because I get to not only see things that get constructed, but I get to see how the people use this construction of themselves to improve their lives. And so when trying to decide what was the next step at age 37, chiropractic called me. It called me in. I looked at many different things, from optometry to dentist to even law school. But this one called me in. After completing, or I should say while going through the program, it became apparent to me that this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more that I could possibly do utilizing this chiropractic modality of having the nervous system be the controlling mechanism for our health. So to take it to the next level, I underwent what was called a Diplomate training, and I am now a certified chiropractic internist, known as a Diplomate of American Board of Chiropractic Internists, a DABCI. And it's a lot of fun. But briefly put, with that, the training says we're going to focus on, for arbitrary numbers, the top 20 leading causes of death. And what can we do about it holistically? And I found that to really set me in motion to where I am today. And I've continued to educate myself with everything I can possibly come across. And I'll decide after I learn it if it's viable for me or not. But I don't shut the door simply because I don't want to know nothing about nothing. I'm here to help those who want to help themselves.
Love that.
And although it's not a high per capita ratio, it's a lot of people.
Yeah.
It's a lot of people. And so I only have 2 hands. There's only 24 hours of the day. I can only do so much for so many, and that's all there is.
Yeah.
But it's such a pleasure to, as I jokingly say, go to my office and turn the lights on, and people walk in one condition and leave happy in a better condition. It's a wonderful job. I love it.
Wow.
And you of all people, I've
Yes.
seen you over the years mature through the ranks, and here we are in your adult phase.
Yeah.
And we're still doing it. I've been at it since 1997, and I think I calculated I've seen about 8,000 different people in that time.
Wow.
And I have to hang my hat on the term 80% of the people get 80% well. So for them, that's considered a home run. There are still individuals that say, well, that's 100% or none, all or none. Fair enough for them. I'm here to help those who wish to help themselves, and recognizing that any improvement is an improvement. Happy day. So we begin.
That's incredible.
It's fun.
Yeah, I mean, well, and it just goes to show it's like you have to live what you're teaching. And I feel like since I've known you, you've consistently brought these ideas or planted these little seeds for me that I maybe at the time was like, oh yeah, whatever, that's just interesting, or, never thought about it that way. But as I've grown, and especially as I got certified as a holistic practitioner and just went down the rabbit hole, I started thinking about it. I'm like, what Bruce said to me actually has a lot of interesting
Who'd have thunk?
validity. Who'd have thunk?
Who'd have thunk? How can that be?
I was like, I should look into this, because this isn't the first time I've heard this.
Fair enough.
Yeah. And,
So we've got lots of fun things to talk about.
oh yeah, we do.
So let's talk about fun things.
Yeah. Well, I mean, did you have any exposure to the allopathic model before that, or were you considering going down that? And maybe, was there some pivotal moment for you that made you think there's got to be more to this?
Yes, and yes. How many yeses do you want to hear?
Yeah.
Yes, and yes. Like all of us, I was born in America. Maybe not all of us, but maybe your listening audience. And I was raised with a paradigm of the Church of Medicine. And you got hospitals, and you got drugs, and you got medical doctors, and it all just seemed grand. And you never question it, because I'm too busy to think about doing it myself. This is what most people say. And in that process, I was the same. And I had major issues that have happened to me both in the Army and after that required medical attention. And I very much appreciate everything that came with it. But when it comes to chronic care for long-term health conditions, I find that the holistic model works the best. The aspect of nature and the aspect of natural processes, depending how far up north you want to go, always appealed to me. And it just made sense that there is a pre-existing design that we live within, that if we just adhered to the principles and kept ourselves in the middle of the road, life could be good. So often we do things and as a result, we feel terrible. And I mean, you consume things, whether it's foods or drinks or drugs. You consume things thinking you're doing okay, and you feel absolutely terrible. And
And then that's like the baseline for most people.
and that's that is the pivotal aspect. There is no single light bulb that went on that said I need to go this route. There's the evil empire versus me. No, it's all integrated together, and different parts have huge benefits, especially on the emergency basis. But there's on the chronic basis, it's about lifestyle and lifestyle choices, and this is where I step in, is to help people make good choices to stay in the middle of the road.
Yeah, the middle path.
Yeah, middle of the path. And, if hypothetically speaking, one could say that the vast majority of people drive through life with their health eyes closed.
Yeah.
They drive blind, and then they don't understand how they get into the predicaments that they are.
Yeah.
And I spend a lot of time explaining to people the real world, how things go, and what you can do about it or not. You don't have to do any of this. That's the whole point. You don't have to do it, except it is very beneficial when you do.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of people just, many times it takes them to get into pain or some type of disease process or sickness. And then all of a sudden they start looking at all of these different little factors in their life and realizing, especially if they're exposed to someone like you or someone that's been on the path, then they're like, wait a second, and they start questioning their reality a little bit. And I think,
why did I do that anyway? And I get it. And wow, the unfortunate side is by the time we wake up, if you will, because of a chronicity or a development of a disease, that's water way under the bridge. We're in trouble, Houston. So the point being here is that looking and recognizing, going back to the principles of the DABCI, is looking and recognizing the process of diseases and working yourself back to square one and seeing if you can nip this thing in the bud. And it's unfortunate that a lot of people come to the table in stage 4 and say, cure me, when you had all this opportunity to get it when it was prior to that.
yeah.
But they just didn't look, and that's our culture.
Yeah, I call it the pain teacher. It's like first there's like someone whispering and saying like, hey, you should pay attention to this.
Oil light flashing, yeah.
And then then it's like a knock on the door, like a little bit harder. And then all of a sudden there's someone yelling at you like, hey, get over here. What are you doing? And it's
an unfortunate scenario, but and so often I hear this expression, well, they didn't tell me. Excuse me, who's they? The information is readily available. When I talk about things like the advent of sugar and how it is so significantly negative for us, the information has been around since the 1970s. So it's not like this is foreign information and nobody can find it.
Yeah.
It's right in front of our faces, and nobody wants to look.
Yeah.
That's the paradigm that we work within.
Totally.
Yeah,
well,
so
it comes down to simplicity a lot of the time. I feel like the lifestyle factor,
inconvenience.
Inconvenience.
I mean, if you look at all the majority of the television ads on commercials over the past decades, not once or twice, but over decades, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, the essence of the commercial is this item is going to make your life easier and more convenient. So why don't you just do it? And that goes through cooking and drinking and preparing and growing and finding all of our own foods. And the point is that they got you convinced that, okay, I don't have to grow those beans. You grew them for me, and I just buy them in a can and put them together. Fair enough. I don't have a farm in my backyard. But still making the right choices as to reading the labels and knowing, is there sugar? What else is in there? And if you read the back of a container and you can't even pronounce the words, that should be a red flag right there.
Yeah.
But you know what? It's inconvenient to even turn that thing around and read it.
Yeah.
And that's the unfortunate side of what we're dealing with.
Well, and I think, it's like a lot of people are unconsciously driven by something that they're not even asking the question of why they're eating that one thing that's making them sick or whatever. And so they just keep in this cycle where they're like, oh, well, I'm going to find that magic pill and it's going to just fix everything. And then I can go on my way and I don't have to ask any more questions.
So true.
Well, and I think we're already kind of discussing it, but one of the things I was going to ask is, there's a lot of different things in the medical industry that we've started to become aware of, especially in more recent times. And a lot of the time it comes down to the root cause of what someone's dealing with. And do you feel like the medical model right now is helping people with the root cause?
Not at all. We know that answer.
Yeah,
Not at all. As a matter of fact, the medical model, as we call it, is to compartmentalize, fragment everything into as many compartments as we can, and share the wealth with everybody. And it's not about the individual being well. It's about compartmentalizing, and we're going to treat you with this, and we're going to treat you with that, and never even going into why is it there.
Yeah.
Now, in fairness to the medical model, going back to our 80% of the people who don't do things because it's inconvenient, 80% don't want to do anything. They just want to take the pill. So who's at fault here, the public or the industry? And so it just is what it is.
Yeah,
and if we can make ourselves aware of our options, and as an individual, you can take appropriate actions that fit your world.
Yeah.
Point in fact. The poisonous nature of a lot of the drugs that we are exposed to, and we know they're poison. It's called adverse drug reactions. It's huge. The number of fatalities from taking the prescribed drugs from the doctor is huge. It's in hundreds of thousands. But here's the paradigm that we're faced with. If we know that the bean, if we eat this bean, we call it the medicine, we know that this bean is poisonous, and if we eat it, we're going to get very sick, if not die from it, because it's poisonous. But the mentality is that if we just cut it in little teeny pieces, a little poison's good for us.
Yeah.
Where did that come from? But that is our mentality.
Right. No, that's very true. I mean, I think it's amazing to think that a lot of us are trying to always separate. Even our body is not a separate organism a lot of the time.
It's one animal.
Are just like, oh, I got to go to the foot specialist, and then I got to go to the ear specialist, and it's all these specialists, which I get it. You know, there's people that want to help people. I know that they're not bad people per se, but we're in a paradigm, so it's just really about the actual veil that's causing our perception.
The glasses by the rose-colored glasses by what we see through. That's so true.
Yeah, well, and it's been super interesting just because, you know, I've had a lot of exposure over the last 5 years being around all these people in California that are incredible in their fields of holistic health and healing and natural healing, and they've really opened my mind to just the different possibilities. But one of the things that really was a red flag that I never had considered or even was aware of is my friend was just telling me, who has a 3-year-old daughter, he was telling me that she, for school, is required to get up to 72 vaccinations.
That hurts.
Yeah.
That hurts to even know that.
Yeah. And just learning about that was like, wait, are you serious? 72? Like, I grew up thinking you just had, I don't know, 10 shots or something like that.
Something.
Yeah.
Well, the idea of holistic care, a lot of people want to try to summarize this thing up. I'm kind of jumping ahead of your questions here about the holistic care concept. And I propose for people to think about the scenario that they're in from a different paradigm, is to think about a coin. You have heads, but what's on the other side? Well, tails, of course. Well, that's obvious. Well, then if you have drugs for your health care, what else do you have? Suddenly there's a great pause. It's like there's nothing else out there. And so now when we drift over to the concepts of the body health and promoting health as opposed to trying to treat disease, one of the ideas that I try to put forth for people to understand is that when you look at holistic health, you're asking yourself, what does the cell want? What does the tissue want? What does the organ require to be the best it can be? Yeah. So yes, we talked about compartmentalization being, I got the knee doctor, the ear doctor, the liver doctor. But the reality is that one needs to address the issue from the perspective that all cells are equal. Yeah. They're basically the same. They just have different parts, different genomic expressions that are turned on that says, I'm the tip of the nose and that one's the tip of the toes.
Yeah.
How did it know? It's pre-built into the cell under the DNA program. And so what I'm trying to suggest is that all the cells are basically the same, largely because on day one, you have a half cell called a sperm and a half cell called an egg. It makes one cell. Right. Everything about us and our ability to adapt and our growth and what does what at what time in our life is all on the DNA of that one cell. So when we step back and say, wow, that's amazing, one cell, now we start thinking about, well, when we have this disease process, what happened to the cell? And now you have to go into the one cell concept is, well, it's got to eat, it's got clean food, clean air, clean water coming in. It does its job, it's functioning, and then it's got to excrete it, respiration, if you will. And toxins can occur. We have toxic removal pathways within the cells, and also the basic debris will go out on its own.
Yeah.
But what happens is we don't ask the cell what it needs. We just eat whatever we want, and we do whatever we want, and we're stunned when we have poisoned ourselves. And now we got ourselves a problem. So going back to what you were saying, go back to the cause of the problem. How far back can we go? All the way.
Yeah.
Down to the clean food, clean air, clean water, and reset the whole process because it's already there to be used.
Right. Well, and it comes back to, I was just meditating on the fact that from what I've seen and what I've learned is that all disease processes come to toxins, stress, or nutrition a lot of the time. Those are like the three big ones that I feel like if they're not addressed, everything else is just going to be a domino effect.
So true. And in the toxic aspect, there's another toxicity to consider, and that's our sleep deprivation or sleep regulation, and how sleep and clean food and clean water have such a significant impact upon us and our stress levels. You're absolutely correct.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, even thinking about the cells and what I've learned about mitochondria and ATP and just how really these, they call it the little engine inside of the cell. I don't know how accurate that is. And
close enough.
Know a lot more.
Judges say close enough. It produces, mitochondria, amongst many other things, will produce the electrons that our body, the 36 ATPs that our body requires at a cellular level to do function. And the mitochondria gives us the currency of these electrons. Yeah. That's the currency of health.
Yeah. Well, and it comes back to even thinking about it like a population of people or organisms inside your body that is actually, they're either all working together to make this beautiful, harmonious body, which is most people, but then there's those cases of disease or dis-ease where all of a sudden the cells are either have too much toxic overload or they're just doing something different. Or even in cancer, what I've learned is just that basically the cells start to make almost a mind of their own and take over the nutrition and all the things that are being supplied by the body and just make their own little hut.
They want to survive. Help.
Survive.
They'll steal from each other. I want to survive. And fair enough. That's what they're designed for. So if we start to look at it from the one cell toxicity aspect, and we want to go back to the root causes, one can ask themselves, what if I had clean air and clean water, clean food? What if I actually did that?
Yeah.
Is the cell capable of cleaning itself up and repair? And the answer is yes, it is, to a point. There are over 1,000 toxic chemicals released into our culture annually.
Yeah.
And that's a lot.
The
estimate's been put at 1,800. That's a lot.
Yeah.
And so the problem we have is, yes, the body has a homeostasis it wishes to achieve and a balancing the mechanism and cleaning itself up, but still it's an adaptation and we haven't evolved fast enough to keep up with the changes of our environment. Adaptations to the overload of sugar, adaptations to the chlorine and fluoride, adaptations to all of the exogenous exotoxins that are coming off of all of our building materials.
Totally.
It's like,
well,
wait a minute.
When it comes to tap water, most people still are like, when I'm telling them, I would consider getting an extremely nice filter, not just a Brita, or
the real
investing
deal.
in spring water or
Get
something
the
like
real
that. They're
deal.
like, what do you mean? Tap water is totally clean. They have all sorts of amazing cleaning mechanisms that get all the things out. And I'm like,
Just ask them to. What's the name of those things? Since there's so many, just tell me one of the names.
chlorine.
Chlorine. Well, and now, in fairness to the overall system of drinkable potable water, yeah, there's critters out there. You go third world, you go along the equator. There's critters in there that it's you got to do something to clean the water up. And when you're having a billion people that you have to give water to, and you have to come up with a system that at least makes it semi-adaptable or semi-clean for them.
Yeah.
And for the technology-wise, past 100 years, chlorine was one of those animals, and we realize today there's a lot of other things we could do.
Yeah.
But they're a little pricier, and we can't do them on a mass level, and blah 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 blah. Clean water.
Yeah.
Find your source. Reverse osmosis is a good one, and you move backwards from there, from bottled water to just filtered water. But reverse osmosis would be a good place to start.
Yeah. Totally. It's just in remineralizing it, putting a little sea salt. That's usually what I tell people to do.
Mm-hmm. And so what is salt, by the way? Sea salt. It's all the minerals put together from a long time ago.
Yeah.
And what do minerals taste like when they're together? Salt.
Yeah.
That's why it tastes so salty. And
Like,
it's good for
I don't
you.
want salty water. I'm like, no, you're not going to taste the salt if you put the right amount.
Well, it's what is it? I think it's Andrew Hoffman, as a spouse is putting a quarter teaspoon of salt in a glass of water and shooting it first thing in the morning.
Yeah.
Shush it down and get it into your system, and it makes sense. I mean, we're coming out of a sleep, and you're breaking the fast with break fast, but your body's coming out of a fasting stage, and just giving yourself a dosage of the minerals and water to wake your day up and get the electrolytes in your brain. It makes sense. I like it.
Yeah, I mean, even in my short career, the amount of clients I've had that just start with coffee, they don't have any hydration ritual, and they don't just explaining to them that all the electrical events that happen in your body are from electrolytes and water, and being able to have that hydration, people don't want to believe it that it's that simple, but it really comes down to that simplicity. Yeah.
Which puts us up against the American paradigm of truth, justice, and the American way, Superman, versus reality.
Yeah.
Reality is just how to take care of yourself.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I know for a lot of people, it can be a confusing or touchy subject, and a lot of people have, been triggered in the last couple of years about becoming aware of maybe the dangers of things like shots or vaccinations and things like that. But I know you were one of the first persons to, I think, tell me about that when I was 15, about the flu shot and being, just careful and aware. And it wasn't like you were anti, but you were just like, be aware of the ramifications of what could happen. And I think you brought some interesting studies to quote. Would love to just have anything that you want to share about
We'll
that.
poke at it a little bit, but one of the main themes, this is not to say against the vaccines, but the issue of the vaccine is to protect you by creating your own immunity against so-called said infectious organism. And the question then becomes well, how else can we do this? And it comes back to what we discovered on the front end of this COVID period that we went through, is that the people that got sick and died were sick to begin with. And they give all these listing things. Well, if you have high blood pressure, if your body mass index is too high, if you have metabolic syndrome, well, hello, what we're saying is you're sick to begin with. And so one may take the position that, well, to stay healthy, why don't we be healthy to begin with and have this internal immune function do what it does every millisecond of our entire lives?
Yeah.
It protects us.
Yeah.
And that's
Well, the body knows how to heal itself.
yeah, it's built in.
Yeah.
And so, the issue here is to protect yourself. Wouldn't it be smarter just to be healthy to start with, instead of chasing after it with hopeful expectations after the fact? And one of the comments I've heard say that I love so much is that if you want to get rid of a bed sore, get out of bed. In other words, stop doing that.
Yeah.
All right, fair enough. A lot of people can't do that. They just can't see it. They can't understand it. It means nothing to them to take care of themselves. And there's a lot of them out there.
Yeah. Well, and it's fascinating because I was not really aware of a lot of this stuff until I started hearing actual stories from friends or family members. And I was working at this health food store with my coworker, and she has Epstein-Barr, which I know is already going to lead to, if you have a kid, it's going to have a little bit of a weakened immune system. But basically, she was telling me that after he had gotten all of his mandated shots to go to school, all of a sudden he was extremely sick and wasn't able to really function. And then over time, he developed autism and just had all sorts of nervous system dysfunctions and things like that. And through what I've learned, and especially from that awakening and just having a lot of different seeds planted, I started questioning the paradigm a little bit. And what I noticed is it wasn't necessarily that one thing was causing this outcome, but after someone already is very weakened and has low immunity and all these things and has, some type of health issues, and then they're getting pummeled by all sorts of things that are in a lot of these shots, like aluminum and different heavy metals that they say is supposed to leave your body in a week, but they're finding that it doesn't, and it ends up in the brain. Those are interesting things.
Yes, they are. And it's unfortunate like that. It's,
Yeah, I mean, it's saddening. It's like, for me, I don't want to, anger people by questioning the paradigm, but I just want to know the truth of health, because I know I want to have a child at some point, and I want them to have the best possible opportunities for health and vitality.
well, if I could point people in a direction rather than taking a side on anything, it's a very good conversation, if you will, written up by Robert Kennedy Jr. I mean, who the heck is he anyway? Just some guy off the street who, and in his later years, aside from being from the Kennedy family and being a governmental elected official, in his later years, he's become the head lead person to the Child's Health Defense Incorporated. And so what that means is he's taken it upon himself to find, on a legal basis, how to protect our children from the system. And so he just simply asks for a lot of things like transparency, and he advocates for having things tested, and he has a skepticism about it all. But one of the things he brings forward is that in the late 80s, the United States government actually passed several laws in 1986 that removed the liability for the drug industries to have the liability for any of the negative outcomes from the vaccines. And he noted that as the requirement of vaccines went up, so did the events, the per capita ratio of autism. And he basically says these words: anybody else see this?
Yeah.
Am I the only one seeing it? And the numbers speak for themselves. You can say, oh, I believe or I don't believe, but the numbers speak for themselves.
Yeah.
And so there is something there, and we have to thank God we live in America, because we do have the ability to say no, and we have the ability to assume responsibility on our own to things that don't make sense. Other countries, it's not that way.
Yeah.
And so I used Robert Kennedy's letter, and it was written in May 2019, and it was published in Politico magazine, and it was actually started in a response to his own family, because he verbalized criticism of the vaccine program. And his own family was basically excommunicating him, and he was just saying, well, this is why I think what I think. But because he does this for a living, if you will, he's a professional at it, and he's got lots of people that are doing the research out there, it's an interesting scenario to have it brought and put right in front of us in simple black and white numbers.
Yeah.
And it gets real simple, it's straightforward, and you look at it and you think, oops, I see what you see. All right, so trying to have a scenario where our kids can be safe and grow up in a healthy world. Yes, the vaccines are within question, but as our discussion has already gone, there's a lot of other things that are involved, because, again, going back to sick people get sicker when the different viruses are coming around. how not to be the sick person first would be the strategy.
Yeah.
And that rolls backwards and it flies in the face of our social paradigms, is to, with every ounce of strength in our body, stop eating the sugar.
Yeah.
I mean, there's enough stories out there that one could say that are called death by sugar.
Yeah.
And, and being smart enough to know the difference.
Yeah. And I mean, even, I don't know the exact numbers, but just learning about the amount of people in America that are pre-diabetic or diabetic already.
It's been placed at higher than 50%.
Yeah.
If not 2/3. Obesity, pre-diabetic, metabolic syndrome, body failure, just body failure.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah.
And then it requires the individual to wake up and start digging into their own research.
Yeah.
And in days of old, we used to say, well, whoever they are, they're hiding it from us, and it's conspiracy theories that no, the answer is out there, the cure is out there, but they're hiding it from us. But the reality is, well, yes, they are hiding it, but they're hiding it right here. It's not tucked in some sort of safe for it. They put it right in front of your face, but then they overload you with techno information, and now we're back to the convenience factor. People don't want to read technical stuff.
Yeah.
Just tell me what it means. All right, now we're back to square one. Let's come back around.
Well, and it goes back to just the amount of half-truths that are out there that I feel like, makes people even more confused, because now there's all these disinformation or misinformation things where a lot of people are even more confused because it's just there's that much more information out there, both diametrically opposed. And it's even, I think, even to add on top of that, there's very deeply qualified people talking about both sides, that it really is just, I mean, I'm luckily someone that I'm just a curious mind, so I just want to know, okay, well, that person said that, that's interesting, let me look at this person, they said this, interesting, well, and then there's some people I talk to that they can only hear one side, which is the majority.
It threatens them, but unfortunately, when this is what my experience in healthcare has been, and it goes into my own family members too, is that when you talk about and demonstrate the validity of the other options, it causes the individuals that don't know these things to go into complete shutdown, because you threaten their intelligence and have exposed their ignorance, and they don't like that. No. And they will come out kicking and screaming, digging their heels in, and they're calling you all kinds of names. That's when you know you really hit the square right in the middle.
Totally.
So and it's unfortunate. And we're here. This is hopefully a lot of what this program is about, is to bring your open-minded curiosity to your own self on health and wellness.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, people say, isn't there a lot more people? Aren't there a lot more people that are more holistically minded now than there have been? Well, yes and no. Yes, there's more people. No, per capita ratio, it's less. They're actually gone the other way.
Wow.
But I have seen indications of rising social consciousness that says there's a block of us out there that are accepting and keeping our minds open to look at how to make our lives long and healthy.
Yeah.
And you and I were talking the other day about, there's a billboard here in Charleston, as you go from Mount Pleasant over to Charleston, that the billboard said, make the second 50 your best 50, which is to imply that there's a social consciousness that 100 years old is attainable, and we're going to do it.
Yeah.
Whoa, that's a big leap. Instead of accepting, well, we're just going to have to die. No, this means there's opportunity, but you have to make it happen.
Yeah. You have to take responsibility. I think that, many times already on this podcast, I've talked about people having this victimhood mentality, and I know I've had my own version of it, but really going into realizing that we have responsibility, especially for our own bodies and our own minds and souls. And so when we have something that is quote unquote happening to us, then we can maybe ask ourselves, how did I attract this? How did I magnetize this situation?
How did you manifest it?
Yeah, because it's like I don't want to spiritually bypass or just, blame myself for every single thing. But at the same time, when I'm having some type of relationship issue or some type of emotional disturbance or health disturbance, I have to start asking, well, what have I been allowing in my life that actually let this happen in the first place?
That's pretty bold of you. How dare you
I know,
accept responsibility? It's their fault.
Yeah.
It's easy to blame.
Yeah, I think the quote is if whatever finger pointing, there's about 10 fingers pointing back at you.
Oh, wow. True.
Yeah. Well, and we touched on it a little bit, but I'm curious, especially because you were one of the first people to turn me on to kinesiology and the intelligence of the body. And really, what is your experience and knowledge of the energy field that is invisible to us? And is there, a lot of people call it prana or chi. Is there something inside of us that is allowing us to actually go into that healing state? And what's your experience with that?
That's a big, big question.
Yeah, I could go
but it would be a paradigm of what is your reality. I've seen a lot of stuff that in the beginning just baffled me, but it's happened so many times that I have to accept the fact that there's something here. So a lot of people would say, "Well, I don't see it, therefore it doesn't exist. I can't. If I can't see it, then all this stuff about energy talk doesn't actually work." I'm not going to go into chakras. I'm not going to go into the different levels of conscious awareness, but they're all important. But the aspect of I don't see it, so therefore it isn't there, that's kind of buffoonery in its own self. I don't see television waves, but I know they're there. I don't see radio waves, but I know they're there. I don't see the electromagnetic frequency waves of a magnet attracting another magnet. I don't see it, but it's there. As they say, you can't see the wind, but you can see the leaves blowing, so there you make an assumption that it's there. In this electromagnetic field, it gets pretty big because you can go all the way out to solar system, universe level planes of influence where you can have gravitational pulls of the sun and planes of influence, and you can bring this whole thing back down to ourselves having interaction on a energetic basis all the way down to the cell, all the way down to the molecule, because when you say H2O, water, that means there's two hydrogens and an oxygen. Well, how are they stuck together, by the way? I don't see anything. It's an electromagnetic frequency of the valence shells that allow the hydrogens to hook into the oxygen. And so there is something there. That's number one. And number two would say, well, does this energy field have some sort of intelligence that it can project? And I would have to say the answer is yes, because you have these electromagnetic frequencies that flow around. It's just like a North Pole and a South Pole, and it's not just a flat plane. It's a spherical thing. And if you lay metal shavings over a piece of paper, put a magnet underneath, it kind of looks like layers of an onion. But one has to ask, well, why is there one layer, and then there's a gap, and there's another layer, and then there's a gap, and why are there layers and gaps? That's a good question, but it's to imply that the layers of energy are condensed and they're flowing electrons. So the next question would come is there any intelligence to the communication of a message relative to these electrons? Going back to our TV and our radio commercials, the answer is, oh, heck yeah. Huge. You got 93.3 versus 93.5 and on the radio, and it's massively, completely separate, but massively different worlds, just in a little frequency shift. All right, having said that, everything has its own frequency and vibrational energy, whether it's water, or it's a metal, or it's us, or it's the earth. So the frequencies make a difference, and I think we're just now getting an empirical outlook on what's actually happening here, as opposed to, well, the Chinese have been doing it for 4,000 to 6,000 years, and a lot of it was subjective as opposed to objective. And we're getting to a point now where we're validating everything that they said was true is true. So it gives us a whole other pathway. You got blood pathway, you have nerve pathway, you have lymphatic pathway of how things flow through the body. Well, there's another pathway, and this is the chi of using the meridian system. And it's a pathway of energy that goes through the body. And we're still trying to figure it out. I wish I could say Yeah, there's a study that validates it 100%, but we haven't got there yet.
Yeah, totally.
But here's another way of looking at it. Just because we haven't figured out how to demonstrate it doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And, take gravity as an example. Our joke was before Isaac Newton demonstrated that it exists, everyone was just flying off the Earth.
Yeah.
Because we didn't know it didn't exist. Yeah. But we realize now that it was obviously there, and now we can do a much better empirical analysis and explanation of this invisible thing called gravity or energy fields and how they pull things together.
Yeah.
And now, having said that, you jump over to the human side. Yeah, I think there's definitely something there. The kinesiology is to imply that your muscle strengths are secondarily pointing at another issue, and that certain blocks of the body can have referred information from another block of the body. And it's easy to see if you have a pain in the back and your foot is going numb, there's something between the two that's happening here.
Yeah.
And the same thing is true if you have organ problems and your back hurts, or if the function of these organs can have blockages due to toxic exposure.
Yeah.
All these things are levels of understanding, and I think there's a lot of validity to it. And having done it for 8,000 different people, it's demonstrated itself to be there.
Yeah.
And all I do, and the medical world uses it too, but they use it in a different capacity. They use like reflexes, which is that's what the kinesiology is doing. It's using a deep tendon reflex to help tell us something. So the medical world will put a flashlight one eye in the other.
Yeah.
So, oh my God, your pupils are constricting differently. They'll hit you in the knee with the hammer and it kicks, and we can make a determination about the deep tendon reflexes using reflexes to help tell us maybe the health of certain parts of the body.
Yeah.
So they already do it, and it's not that new. It's already incorporated.
Yeah.
Then there's a block of people out there that have been using it even longer. It's called the police department. And it's called, the kinesiology for them is a lie detector test. It's a polygraph, because the body can only say two words, yes and no. And you have to figure out how to use the answers to help benefit the health of the individual, which means you have to figure out how to ask the questions in a binary code, yes or no process.
Yeah.
But the outcome of the information is absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah.
And
do you ever do like self-testing?
It's tough.
It's tough, right?
Because now we're drifting into a thing that says, oh, by the way, did I want it to be this answer?
Yeah.
As opposed to, and that's more subjective.
The mental suggestion, yeah.
So for me to self-test, it's easier for someone else to ask or do the testing, and I rely upon their answers that I'm putting out. Because if I'm asking the question and testing myself, I've already preset the answer that I potentially might be looking for.
Yeah.
And so, I give it more than 50% accurate, but not a whole lot.
Right.
But when I deal with other people, the accuracy is way above 80%. It's amazing. It's just amazing.
Well, and it's amazing how there's so many different parts of the body that are just, it's like a supercomputer that's consistently communicating with itself. The amount of times, even at the Czech Institute, we're trained to look at someone's diet when they have low back pain, because a lot of the time the organs and glands are actually referring its pain from inflammation in the gut to the lower back. And people are going to all these doctors and people that are looking at their back with a magnifying glass. I mean, not really, but you know what I mean.
Yes.
And then no one's ever asked them if they're eating gluten and dairy or if they're having a lot of sugar.
It doesn't matter. Here's your pill for, your X marks the spot. You got a red dot, here's your red dot disease pill.
Yeah.
And it's just easier. It's easier on the practitioner. It's easier on the patient, because they don't want to know the big answer. They just give me the easiest thing I can do to ignore it.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Well, I mean, that's super inspiring, because also when I think back to one of the first things that you turned me on to was, I remember you were testing my allergies with a little vial in my hand. And I was very confused by that at the time. I think I was probably 16 or something like that. It was
last summer, just say the truth. It was just yesterday.
But it was pretty interesting because, I had never heard of that. But then...
Fair enough. They don't teach it in schools.
Yeah.
They do, but they don't.
Yeah.
I often ask people, I said, before, they said, well, how does this work? And I have to Say, ask them some simple questions. Did you ever study science? Well, sort of. Did you ever take biology? Well, maybe. Let's go up a notch. Did you ever do any chemistry or physics? And the answer most times is no. Or if they even say, well, I did in high school. I say, fair enough. That's enough. You have seen it. You know something's there.
Yeah.
But for the most people, like you had just said, it's just, wow, I had no idea.
Yeah.
But here's the fun part. Once you know, you cannot unknow.
Yeah.
You still know it's there. You saw it happen. You don't have to adhere to it, but you still know it's there.
Yeah, that's very true. Well, it's... what was I going to say?
We'll take a pause right
Yeah,
here.
take a little pause.
You'll cut this part out.
Yeah,
Come
yeah,
right
I'll
back
cut this
in.
pause out. 'Cause we got to that.
Well, we could talk about sugars.
Okay.
We could talk about.
Well,
we've already done the part with the vaccines.
Yeah.
So we can move into.
Yeah,
'cause
maybe a
really,
little bit.
where we want to go is what's my takeaway? What can I take away?
Yeah, because that's what I want to get to. Yeah. But before I get to that, so one of the things that you had mentioned to me even before we started this podcast is that allergies are actually something that we don't have to deal with. I'm curious about just a little share about that.
That's a very good question. The idea of what an allergy is by medical terms is it says there's immunoglobulins present that fit the word GAME, G-A-M-E. And so the immunoglobulin G, A, M, and E is the concept of what kind of allergy you have. Delayed histamine, the secretory IgA, do I have an anaphylactic? These are the concepts. But then there's elements to the body's physical reaction that says, well, maybe it's not a full-blown allergy, it's a sensitivity. In all cases, it comes back around and it causes the function of the cell to go wacky. Either there's not enough or too much. But in many cases, in all the cases, it creates this scenario called inflammation. We like to think of allergies being runny nose and itchy eyes when, no, it's cellular inflammation at the wrong time is what the allergy is. And so what I do through the N.A.E.T is I have found, and through the training and my experience, that it's like a light switch. It has a binary polar north-south opposite part to it that it can turn on and it can be turned off. And using the kinesiology, as you were saying, is that there's pathways and buttons and avenues that allow us access to these where these on and off switches are. And it's well established within the meridian sciences of Oriental medicine, but it's not well established inside Western medicine.
Right.
And so just using what's already been shown to be there has been a phenomenal process, because a lot of people say, oh my God, I got allergies. Well, my first question is, well, how long have you had them? Well, it just kind of started 2 years ago with the cat and the dog, or 3 years ago, I've had them forever. And I said, well, how long is forever? 20 years? 30 years, 40 years, 50 years. Well, no, not that long. Now it's not forever. And what we establish is that there was a period in your life when you didn't have it, and now you do. So the switch got flipped, and the question becomes can we flip the switch back?
Right.
Could it be normal? The answer is absolutely yes, you can.
Yeah.
Because it went one way, could it go back? And the answer is yes. And now the second question is well, can it ever be flipped again in the future? Oh yeah. If you don't stop that thing you're doing, it's going to happen again.
Yeah.
And I so often had people say, well, what am I doing? And my answer is always the same. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not there. It's your world. Pay attention. But then I ask them questions about their lifestyle, and it starts to become quite apparent where the problem is. And it's in their lifestyle, from their sleep patterns, to their dietary patterns, to their stress patterns. Lifestyle.
Yeah.
And so the kinesiology through this allergy technique allows us to turn it off. And what that means at the cellular level is that the functions of the cell resume their original intent or objectives as to what their design was. And when we talk about allergies, we're talking about cellular and body inflammation.
Yeah.
And now, why would we say that? It's because there was an article in Time magazine from 2004 about longevity and inflammation, and it basically points out that pretty much all of our diseases come from inflammation first, and then it becomes a disease second. So this is very powerful stuff.
It is. I mean, I remember I saw my dad be very allergic to cats when I was younger, and once he started working with you, all of a sudden we were able to have cats. And people didn't even believe me when I told them.
You and I, prior to this podcast, were having a conversation about animal allergies because we were talking about veterinarians and et cetera. And for anybody that's listening out there, animal allergies are so easy to fix. It is so easy. It's one of the straightforward ones. And it may take a couple go-arounds, but done is done. Wow. It's a wonderful thing. And now all those families that thought they were going to have to get rid of their animals because a child has developed an allergy, they don't have to have that anymore. Yeah. And you're saving a family member.
That's super inspiring.
It's very, very important, very good stuff.
Yeah, well, and, that leads me to my next question, which is, in the process of if someone out there is listening and they really want to start making their changes and want to go through that process of living a better lifestyle, where do you think they should start, or what's some of the low-hanging fruit?
Fair enough. This is truly the best way. It's just like when you want to start exercising again. Let's hypothetically say we're not 21 years old. Let's hypothetically say we're 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years old. How do we start this thing? Soft and slow, but continuously pushing forwards to the next level. Because if you go too hard too fast, we get hurt from exercise. Well, is that true when we're like diet? People say, well, I went on a diet and I went fast at it, but I couldn't maintain it. So they quit. Yeah. So what we want not to happen is quit. Just don't quit. So how to get started is it's a simple thing. Clean up your act. If you've got a bucket full of caca and we empty it, call it your health, don't fill it back up. Yeah. And so this most straightforward thing to do, if one were to go in this direction, is you could start with the basic three. Clean water, regulated sleep, and here comes the nasty one, cut the sugar out. Stop the sugar. Now, okay, there are people out there saying, well, what about fruit? Well, what about fruit? Yeah. Fruit's a complex carbohydrate, and it's we digest it differently than if it's a refined carbohydrate. Right. And fruit is not high fructose corn syrup, which is basically heroin of the sugar world. And so if we get the sugar out and we drink clean water and we have regulated sleep, you'd be stunned as to how well you start feeling different. The next level up is now stop eating so darn much. Yeah. Don't eat seconds. Yeah. Stop. And there's, humanity since the beginning of time up until about 50 years ago was in a constant state of starvation. And it wasn't until our lifetime when the obesity through the sugars and the processed foods all came around. Right. But it also started the process of addictive eating behaviors that we eat way too much, and especially at the wrong times. Yeah. So fasting would be number 4. Yeah. Finding some way in to cut the body back, and that's called autolysis or autophagy. Yeah. And it's where the cells can eat themselves when they're under stress of starvation, but that stress causes the cell to repair themselves. Yeah. They eat the bad guys first. They eat the bad stuff first. Yeah, it's funny how many people are like, oh, I can't do anything without eating, or oh, I'm doing intermittent fasting. But I will say I laugh a little bit at intermittent fasting because, yes, I think it's great, but it's also in a natural rhythm of eating. We should always be intermittent fasting. We shouldn't be eating all the time. You break the fast in the morning. You've already gone through 8 hours of fast. Yeah. And so part of that has been said is you don't go to bed with a full stomach. You go to bed with an empty stomach. Yeah. That's the reverse of a mindset. So what we've said here is the easiest things to do is clean air, clean water, clean food by stopping the sugar. Now, jumping over to the clean food, what if we ate something that we have to cook ourselves? Dare I say, we don't eat out of a box TV dinners. We don't have Uber Eats deliver it to our house. We actually prepared it ourselves. Creating a relationship with the food. Yeah, and then in that, you have control over the quality and the types of things that are in there. And the tighter you put the screws on that thing, the better it works. Yeah. But now we're going back up against the thing called convenience. Yes. The TV set has got us convinced that it's inconvenient to do ourselves. Just Uber Eats. Have them sent to your house. Right. And then we can't understand why we're obese and bankrupt. and
Right.
sick. I
Yeah.
wonder how that happened. So, okay, if you're going to eat clean food, going back to that paradigm, it's often been said that you go to the grocery store, you only shop on the outside aisles because that's where the refrigeration and the produce are.
Right.
The inside aisles is all cans and boxes, and I can't
That's
read a darn thing that's in them.
That's a very good point.
So the eating produce, and if you're going to go into that route, make it organic. And people say, "Oh my gosh, organic's more expensive." Are you kidding? We spend so much on so little, and have nothing to show for it.
Well, they're shopping for it like it's gas or something like that, and it's not. It's there's so much more to food than just.
You want it to be the highest octane fuel for your body without junk in it. So we've got clean water, clean air, sleep regulation, keep the sugar out, eating high quality foods like produce, and limiting how much you eat. It's like all of these are lifestyle changes.
Yeah.
And people want the magic pills. Isn't there a magic pill I can take?
Yeah.
Well, actually, there is. But it's not it's multiple ones. But going back to our inflammation side, if you can do any of the proteolytic enzymes, they can help you break down the inflammation. Bromelase, turmeric, coumarin, quercetin. That's the biggest one that seems to be the most broad and covered, or some people call it quercetin.
Yeah.
Quercetin is a hugely beneficial digestive enzyme for both food, but also for inflammatory processes of the body.
Yeah.
And so as a person goes to an anti-inflammatory protocol, it incorporates digestive proteolytic. I mean, it's protein eating, proteolytic enzymes and they break down the inflammation for you.
Yeah.
But they still don't solve it because you're still putting it in. They're jumping in at square 3 and at square 2 and 1. We're still putting it in. So we want to roll backwards, and the less we put in, the less we have to clean up.
Absolutely. I love that. Well, and to wrap this up, one of my favorite questions to ask my guests is, if you were to leave the earth tomorrow, what message would you leave?
Ooh, wow. This is me personally.
Yes.
It's not necessarily for humanity on a scientific basis. I am a firm believer that we're on earth to learn how to love, how to stop fear, to learn how not to be afraid, and learn how to love. So our objective is to get away from fear and go into love. And fear is based upon ignorance. So there was an expression I learned in the Army when I went through basic training. As you go through the gas chamber, you're 18 years old, take your face mask off and stand in the tear gas and inhale it and say your name and social security number. It's tough. That's hard to do. But as you walk into the gas chamber, it has a little, this is Fort Knox, by the way, Kentucky.
Jeez.
It says, defeat fear through knowledge. And I'm thinking, I'm 18 years old with my gas mask in hand. I wonder what they mean with that. As I walk in, I wonder what that means. Well, now you know that if you know something, whether it's painful or not, you still know it. So there's no fear of it because you actually know it. And that's the point they made to us. It was bad trainees, but it wasn't that bad. And now you know what to do.
Yeah.
So that's the thing, if I could ever project to people, is to how to lose their fear and how to embrace love. And in that process, take care of yourself and those around you. And this is a whole different planet that we live on.
Yeah.
Instead of taking, we give.
Yeah.
I mean, sorry to be going backwards on this thing, but I grew
Absolutely. The sacred reciprocity.
I grew up, and I remember when John Kennedy was sworn in for president. Wow. That's how far back this goes. I remember when Eisenhower was president. I remember the Nixon-Kennedy debates. I remember John Kennedy's inaugural speech about, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. In other words, give it away.
Yeah.
Help others.
Absolutely.
And on a healthcare basis, help others.
Yeah.
Don't shame them because they're doing something different from you.
Yeah.
And you know they're right. Don't try to shame them because you know they're right, and that makes potentially yourself wrong. But as you start off having a curious, open mind,
Yeah.
it's beautiful and it's fun.
Yeah.
Health recovery is a fun process.
Yeah.
I have so much fun laughing about all the fun things in life that we're doing, and when you're feeling
it's a
good,
cosmic joke, isn't it?
and it's fun. It's just, you don't have to be afraid of being healthy. It's fun, and you can do so much. And I mean, we'll save it for another podcast. But the whole thing about longevity and how it just keeps expanding and expanding. hell, let's do it. Let's chase this rabbit hole and see where it takes us.
Yeah.
Worst comes to worst, we go nowhere.
Yeah, totally.
But at least we tried. The best comes the best. It's like, here we are, 200 years old, and we look just like we do right now.
Yeah.
There's one word for it. And it's dude.
Dude. Well, and where can people find you? And, is there any place that you want to lead them to?
Me personally, I have a website. It's Dr. Gwinnup, drgwinnup.com. And there's a website.
Gwinnup.
Yeah, DRGWINNUP. And it also channels you into holistic care of Charleston. It's not like I have a library of or an encyclopedia on the internet. It's just a brief. Here I am. This is howdy doody. This is what I do.
Yeah.
And my joy is helping those who wish to help themselves. I'm not here to persuade anybody outside of their opinion. I'm here to help those who help themselves.
Yes, I love that. Well, thanks so much for being here, and I appreciate all of your knowledge, and we're definitely going to have to do another podcast diving into some deeper subjects.
Exactly. Thank you, Adam.
Absolutely. Peace.
Peace out.
Thanks again for tuning in to the Fallen Frequency podcast. I love sharing these guests, and it helps if you go and leave a review if you love this podcast as much as I did. And at the very least, please share it with your friends and your family and anyone that might benefit from living in their freedom of frequency, life, and holistic living. I will talk to you soon. Look forward to the next one.